Great. So we're going to call to order a little bit late, 9:41. Sorry for the technical difficulties. maybe in another 6 months and we'll have this down pat. Oh boy. Okay. So 9:41, call to order. I'm going to ask for any additions or deletions to the agenda. Anything? Nope. Okay. Moving on. Adoption of the agenda from our August 18th, 2021 meeting. I'll be looking for a motion to adopt if everyone's had a chance to review.
I can give you that, Lana.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holiday. Any comments? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That's 4, carried. Adoption of, oh, I'm sorry, I messed that up. So that was the adoption of the agenda for today's meeting. I'm so sorry. Now we'll move forward to the adoption of the minutes from February 17th, 2021.
I wasn't there, set up there, Cindy.
Yeah, Cindy, I'm going to let you those minutes.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, they're all good. Although we had the report put into the minutes, and I didn't know if that was supposed to be there or not. The old report, at least in the version that I had.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have had that in the past, the report for the application that was on the agenda from that meeting. But is that just a new process we're going to be doing, including the reports, or?
I have no idea. If you want it to be, then we can. If we don't, then
Sure. Yeah, it's
No.
fine the way it was. All the information together, but I think it just makes it a little bit lengthy, right? It can, if the report is huge, it could make the agenda package.
yeah, definitely could. So, my apologies.
Oh, no apologies needed. Okay, so I will look for a vote on adoption of the February 17th, 2021 minutes. All in favor? Okay, carried. And subdivision applications, we have no items. So we'll move to number 6, development permit applications. Item 6.1, variance approval for 328 Sunset Boulevard Northwest. And I will turn this over, is this going to Becky with Urban Systems?
Yes.
Great. I'll also note that we do have a new member, Becky. So Urban Systems is working with us right now as we have a gap in staffing, and we've got a new member, Peter, here. So welcome. Thank you, Peter. He's new to the town of Turner Valley from December, so not even a year. He's eager. So thanks so much for joining us. Go ahead, Becky.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair Hamilton. Just want to say first, hi, it's great to see everyone again. Good morning. So today we're going to go through a proposal. I actually should stop. If at any point you can't hear me, please let me know. Just definitely interrupt me or wave because I know that sometimes that happens, and just catch me before I keep going so that everyone can hear. So the proposal today is for an application for 5 variances for the property at 328 Sunset Boulevard. So that's on the corner of Sunset Boulevard and Robert Street. The applicant is Catherine and Peter Keenan. And the reason for the variance application is due to the applicant's application for a certificate of compliance for their property. So the property does not comply with the standards of the land use bylaw that's currently in force. So therefore, in order to receive compliance, the applicant has applied for a variance application to vary those standards that do not comply. So again, the purpose of the discussion today is to decide whether or not to approve those variances. So I'm actually going to share my screen so we can all look at the same. Hopefully people can see the screen, but I think it would help for us all to see this real property report of the property. So I'm just going to jump to that page of the council package, or sorry, the MPC package. So that's on page, is it 921 of the package. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah, okay, great. So the town received an application for a certificate of compliance for the property. So that includes the submission of a real property report, which we can see here. So this is a survey of the property showing property information such as building location, setbacks, those sorts of elements. The purpose of this process is to receive confirmation from the town that the locations of the structures on the property comply with the land use bylaw that's currently in force. So this process is usually required by lending agencies like banks or lawyers, real estate agents in the sale of a property to protect their client's investment. So for example, standard real estate purchase contracts sometimes require a seller to obtain a compliance certificate. So usually that's in the form of a stamp on their real property report. So just want to reiterate that this process isn't a legislative requirement, but rather a service provided by the town. So the town doesn't actually require individuals to obtain a compliance certificate, as the town does not intervene in these types of private transactions. Again, I did want to note that this review relates only to the building location. So it doesn't relate to, for example, encroachments of fences between neighbors, and it doesn't take into consideration any federal, provincial, or municipal legislation, for example, like building code requirements. So as mentioned, if the property doesn't comply with the land use bylaw in force at the time, administration will then look to see if it was in compliance with the bylaw that was in force when it was constructed. Now, of course, and if it was compliant, then they can receive a legal non-conforming, just meaning that the property isn't compliant with the bylaw currently in force, but it is legal. Of course, sometimes, buildings and structures were built quite a while ago. So in this case, we looked back on the property and weren't able to glean whether or not it complied with the land use bylaw in force when it was built. And we were unable to confirm if there were any variance approvals previously for the property. So therefore, that leads us to where we are today, which is to receive compliance by getting those standards that don't comply approved through this variance process. And the reason why we go to Municipal Planning Commission for that is because the variances that I'll go through today, they go beyond the authority for the development officer to approve. So the development officer can approve up to 10%, and this goes above that. So I'm going to walk you through this property to kind of show you and highlight where these variances are, these standards that don't comply. So first of all, we've got the principal dwelling. So each side setback, as listed here, do not comply with what's the bylaw is stipulating that's currently in force. So we've got 1.91, and in the bylaw, because this is on a corner lot, that requires 3 meters. And then on the other side setback, it's 0.66, which it's required to be 1.5 in the bylaw. The garage, as you can see, is kind of pushed up against the rear and side property. And so the side setbacks for the garage are 0.26, and it's similar to the principal dwelling because it is on a corner lot. It is required to have a 3-meter setback. Additionally, there is a standard land use bylaw that stipulates when a garage's entrance is facing a side street or road right of way, it has to be 6 meters from the property. And then lastly, we've got the rear setback of the accessory building, which is pushed pretty much right up against that rear property line. It's about 0.1 meters away. Additionally, and I can just zoom in here, hopefully that works. We've got some eaves of the garage that are encroaching into the right of way. So in this case, because it is a corner lot, the side eaves are encroaching into the town right of way as well as in the rear, because this is town-owned land. So those are the sort of areas that don't comply and what we're asking for approval of in terms of the variance today. I did also want to walk you through our circulation. As part of this process, we did circulate this real property report and those standards listed to the relevant internal agencies. basically just to review and flag any concerns with the variances proposed. The fire department and Park Enterprise, which is the group that processes the building permit applications, they had no concerns with the variances proposed, especially since these structures have been there a while. They were built previously. The town project manager highlighted that the encroaching eaves must be removed. If not possible, an encroachment agreement must be entered into between the landowner and the town. And I'll go into that further later in my report. Additionally, there was discussion around visibility. So if it was impacted with this garage being so close and there being this laneway here, it was noted though that along Robert Street, this town right-of-way, this patch of grass, which is town land, is quite wide. So we don't believe that there's significant impact visibility for people entering or exiting this laneway, as that there is this wide town boulevard here. So I do want to go into the analysis and options next. So the options for MPC decision are to approve the proposed variances with conditions as presented, table the proposed variances to do additional research, or refuse the proposed variances. So for our analysis, the site is under the R1 residential single detached district. So that's the district, as well as other applicable regulations that we looked at in the land use bylaw when we reviewed it. With the encroachments mentioned previously, so these are the eaves that are located in the town's right-of-way. The applicant has to remove these eaves or enter into an encroachment agreement with the town, and this is a proposed condition of this variance approval. Essentially, the agreement acknowledges and describes the encroachment, and it also outlines the agreed upon terms, including waiving liability of the town should there be damage incurred to the structure if the town needs to access this area. So essentially, the reasoning for an encroachment agreement is basically to protect the town should anyone need to be in that space and for whatever reason incurred damages to their property. It's basically just waiving that. So that agreement would be executed between the town and the landowner. And then that runs with the land. So it gets registered on title. And even if there's a change of ownership, that remains on title until the eaves are removed and it can be discharged. So administration believes that for these variances, there's not a significant impact on the neighborhood. It is a corner site, therefore there's no neighbor directly adjacent to this garage that's pushed up against the side setback. The accessory building still has to comply with the land use bylaw, in that the land use bylaw does require drainage to be managed and maintained on site on the property and not draining into adjacent properties. We have mentioned already that the applicant is going to be required to either remove the encroachments or enter into an encroachment agreement. We've mentioned that we don't believe there's a significant impact on visibility from the laneway. And then also, these are existing structures. So, considering how rectifying this error may create a necessary hardship to the property owner. So also taking that into consideration. So to conclude, the recommendation is to approve all 5 variances as listed on page 16 and 17 of the agenda package with the condition as presented. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, so thank you for that. I'm going to look to the members for questions or clarification. Rolling. No question. Okay, I've got a quick one on the encroachment or the eave. I'm just wondering what the process is like to get the encroachment agreement. Because I feel like that might be kind of difficult process to remove the existing things that are there and have obviously been there for a very, very long time. What is that process like to enter into the encroachment agreement?
Sure, thanks for the question. So the town would have a template that we use for an encroachment agreement. You know, it's standard language, again, just sort of stipulating the terms of the agreement in terms of, again, sort of waiving that liability should any damage happen to the structure. So essentially we have that executed and signed by the landowner, and then we would send it in to land titles to get registered on title. So it is a fairly straightforward process. We are at the mercy of land titles in terms of registering it on title, but it shouldn't hold up the actual compliance stamp process. And it's just a layer, again, to protect the town for this if we're not actually getting them to remove the eaves.
Okay, so timelines are kind of out of the town's control there once it gets sent over to land titles. Do you think that's going to be an issue for our applicant?
I don't think so. Like, I think that the town can work with the applicant to get this stamp and this sorted for them. Again, we want confirmation that it's registered on title, but I think for sure we can work with them. And again, it is sort of variable. Sometimes land titles is sort of quick, sometimes they're slower, but we can work with the applicant and ensure that they're aware of these timelines.
Okay, any other, oh, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. I do have that property. It's right where I turn onto Sunset. I was not aware that there was encroachment, but after seeing this application, I took a look, and it's clear that the garage is in the back alley. Fortunately, the alley is fairly wide, but you do talk about drainage. As far as cutting those eaves off on that side, I think that'd be pretty hard. But perhaps make sure that there's the eaves troughs properly drained into the property rather than to the back alley. As far as the shed is concerned, the sheds can always be moved, obviously, but you know, the garage is probably on cement, but the shed can be moved, but it doesn't really help you much because the garage goes past it anyway, so why worry about the shed, I guess. They did a lot of work on that principal residence this past winter in the basement. They basically must have had some, you know, faulty cracks or whatever. I think it's probably leaking, so they spent a lot of money and time there working this past winter. And that had been the time to move the house if they were going to do it, but that it seems really, if you look at the property up the front on the street side from Sunset, it doesn't look like there's a problem. But when you start looking at the actual measurements, it certainly is a problem. But the only thing I'm concerned about is that garage is right onto the back alley. But as I say, I could live with, I could support all the easements, but you can't be responsible if somebody runs into it with a truck or something like that, which could easily happen. It is in the alley. That's it.
Did you have a comment, please? Councillor Holiday? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check. So this is only for the existing structure. If they were to tear it down and build a new garage, they would have to comply with the current land use bylaw at that time. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, through the chair, to answer your question, certainly, yeah, they would have to comply. And usually the verbiage that we're issuing with these stamps is sort of explaining that this is the bylaw that's currently in force. And even in situations where they are legal non-conforming, there's always that stipulation that, yes, it's legal, it's non-conforming. However, should you choose to rebuild, then yes, as always, whenever you're building something new, it has to comply with the current land use bylaw in force.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would suspect that building was probably, the house was probably built prior to 1960. That's just my guess. It could have even been in the 40s or 50s when it was built, but you know, I think it's been around for a long time. So, you know, maybe the bylaws were different at that time. So if you go back to history of the town, they were pretty sketchy anyway. Well, that's just the way it was. 100 years ago, people didn't care much as long as they put the structure up. It was good. So, anyway.
Okay, CAO Patience, I think you had your hand up.
I did. Thank you, Chairman Hamilton. So just a couple of pieces. Yeah, we actually went back in the archives to try and see if we could find a land use bylaw in effect. The assessment on this property suggests 1960 construction. All we could find was a zoning bylaw that was dated 1944, so nothing that was relevant there. I also want to add, from an administrative perspective, As far as I'm concerned, once the applicant signs the encroachment agreement, that would, in my estimation, satisfy the conditions of the variance application. The registering with land titles is just a method to ensure that caveat remains in place as long as the structure is in existence and goes with obviously the land. So once the applicant signs the encroachment agreement, from our perspective, we can sign off that the conditions have been met. If that makes any sense.
Yep, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments or feedback from the MPC? If not, I will ask for a motion. Want to make a motion?
Sure.
Okay, so we've got a recommendation as presented from administration.
Okay, let's make the motion that the MPC approves the following 5 variances below with conditions as presented.
Okay, would we like to include the property address with that motion, or is it okay as written in the agenda package? Okay, I'll just do a friendly amendment to add the civic address of 328 Sunset Boulevard Northwest to that motion, please. I'll look for any other comments or feedback from the MPC. There are none. Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Okay, I think that is it for our agenda. We've got no items under 7 and 8. So we can go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 10:03 a.m. That was late. Thank you so much, Becky, and everybody for attending. Have a great smoke-free day. It was nice out there.
You as well.